Everyone refused to save the paralyzed alien warrior, except this human soldier. The battlefield was dead and burning. The smell of plasma and melted metal hung in the air like poison. Smoke curled up from broken tanks and shattered mechs. Empty shell casings crunched under his boots as Sergeant Brian Carter walked slowly through what was left of the forward command post. This place had been the heart of the defense only an hour ago. Now it was just wreckage and silence. Brian's Mark-Savan plasma rifle rested against his shoulder, its power cell humming softly. In this ruined place, that quiet sound felt like the only thing still working the way it should. His tactical display showed nothing but static, a broken green mess over his visor. The enemy's last attack had wiped out their comms, their scanners, and most of their people. The Dronid forces had hit them hard and fast, like a tidal wave of claws, armor, and energy fire. The 23rd Marine Combat Division had been a full unit that morning. Now, as far as Brian could tell, it was just him. He moved carefully between burning walls and fallen towers, listening for anything that did not sound like his own footsteps. No radio calls, no shouting, no orders. Only the soft pop of distant fires and the occasional crash as a damaged mech finally gave up and collapsed. It felt like walking through a graveyard that had not realized it was a graveyard yet. Then his suit's sensors caught something, a faint movement ahead. Brian dropped into a crouch without thinking, his muscles moving faster than his thoughts. He raised his rifle and stared through the drifting dust. For a second, he thought it was just another pile of debris, but then he saw hair. Long strands of silver spread on the dark ground like poured liquid metal. He stepped closer, rifle still ready. The figure was half buried under broken plating and shattered support beams. As the smoke thinned, he saw more details. Skin with a soft lavender gray color, smooth, almost glowing where the light hit it. Armor that looked like a mix of ancient warrior clothes and advanced tech, now torn open and stained with strange, faintly glowing blood. She was not human, she was Lazarian, one of humanity's strongest allies in the war against the Dronids. Her eyes opened as he reached her. They were the color of storm clouds, deep and fierce even now. For a moment they just stared at each other. Human soldier in dirty, scorched armor and an alien warrior princess lying broken on the ground. "Don't move," he said, dropping to one knee beside her. "I'm Sergeant Brian Carter, Earth Marine Corps." "Kira," she managed, her voice musical even through the pain. "Kira Banis, 3rd Strike Force. I can't feel my legs." Brian's medical scanner confirmed what she already knew. Severe damage to the spine, no movement below the waist. Out here, in the middle of a hot zone that was basically a death sentence, she was powerful. She was important. She was also completely helpless. He glanced back at the wreckage, then at his HUD. No friendly signals, no evac beacons, just the burnt-out remains of the command post and static-filled air. This Lazarian warrior was exactly the kind of person the Alliance could not afford to lose. But right now, she was also exactly the kind of casualty the rules said to leave behind. He tightened his jaw. Everyone else would have walked past her and called it following protocol. Brian felt deep in his chest that this was not going to be that kind of day. Military protocol was clear in situations like this. Immobile casualties were to be left behind during retreat. You saved who could move. You saved the ones you could carry without dying yourself. You did not drag a paralyzed ally through an active war zone. Not when enemy forces might be regrouping and closing in from every side. The rule existed for a reason. It maximized survival chances for the many. It kept one bad decision from killing an entire squad. Brian knew that. He knew it better than anyone. It had been drilled into him in training, reinforced in combat, carved into his instincts. Leave no one behind was a noble idea, but the actual line in the manual was more cruel. Immobile casualties are to be abandoned if extraction would risk mission success or the survival of mobile personnel. Mobile personnel meant Brian, one man, and one rifle. Kira watched him, breathing hard. Even through the pain, she could read the conflict in his eyes. "Just leave me," she said quietly. "Others must have survived." Save yourself. His HUD flickered, then locked onto new signals. Multiple contacts coming in from the north. Drawned patrols. At least a small group. Maybe more behind them. His tactical display painted little red dots on the edges of his vision. They were not on top of him yet, but they were coming. The smart move was obvious. Turn around, move fast, and find a safe route out of this burning crater before those red dots turned into claws and plasma shots. He looked down at Kira again. Under the dust and blood, she was calm in a way that did not match the situation. Her people were warriors. She understood protocol. She understood sacrifice. In her mind, the math was simple. One soldier with a chance to escape was worth more than one paralyzed ally who would slow everything down. She was giving him the out he was supposed to take. Brian's heart pounded, but not from fear of the enemy. It was from the idea of walking away. Leaving her there alone in the ruins, waiting for the dronids to find her, would be easy. One step back, then another. Then he could tell himself he had done the logical thing. The thing the book demanded. The thing any commander would sign off on. His fingers tightened on his rifle. He could almost hear some invisible officer in his head. Sergeant, protocol exists for a reason. You can't save everyone. You can't throw your life away for one soldier, even a Lazarian. Another voice, colder. If you try to save her and fail, you're both dead. If you walk away, at least someone from the 23rd makes it home. But something in him pushed back. Hard. This was not just about one battle or one rule. This was about who he was and what kind of future he believed in. Humans and Lazarians had fought side by side to hold back the dronids for years. Their alliance was fragile and precious. Losing a warrior like Kira would be a blow on the battlefield. Believing her to die, when he could have tried, would be something worse. It would be a wound in his own conscience that would never heal. The red dots on his display moved closer. Time was running out. Kira saw it too. Go, she said. That's an order, Sergeant. He looked at her for a long second, jaw clenched. Then he slung his rifle, shoved broken metal off her with a burst of augmented strength and slid one arm under her shoulders. Like hell, he growled. I didn't survive this mess just to leave someone behind. For a heartbeat, she only stared at him. Then, slowly, the corners of her mouth curved in a faint, surprised smile. Stubborn human, she whispered. You haven't seen stubborn yet, he answered, lifting her as gently as he could. He knew the dangers. Carrying her would slow him down. The approaching enemies could catch them.
How one lucky shot could end both their lives.
Every step away from protocol was a step toward unknown consequences. But he also knew this choice was bigger than the next 10 minutes. Saving her might change
nothing, or it might change everything. The war, the alliance, the future of both their species. He did not know how. Not yet. All he knew was that walking away would have been the end of something important inside him. So he chose the harder road, the dangerous one, with a paralyzed alien warrior in his arms, and enemy signals closing in. It felt, somehow, like the beginning of something much larger than either of them could see. And somewhere far beyond the smoke and fire, fate quietly shifted its weight. Brian tightened his grip around Kira's shoulders as he rose, her weight settling into his arms with surprising ease. His enhanced muscles did most of the work, but he still felt the careful balance in every step. The smoke around them drifted, in slow waves, glowing faintly from fire still burning in the ruins. The air tasted like metal and dust, sharp enough to sting his throat. Kira's breathing was steady but shallow. Even wounded, she seemed alert, her eyes scanning the shadows around them. Her silver hair brushed against Brian's chest with each step. It looked soft and bright even in the dim, broken light of the battlefield. For a moment, he wondered what someone like Herstrong, skilled, disciplined, had been thinking in the last few minutes before he arrived. Had she accepted death? Had she waited for help no one else was willing to give? He pushed the thought aside. Right now, she was alive, and he intended to keep her that way. You're remarkably calm, she murmured, her voice low and smooth. For someone carrying dead weight through a war zone, Brian almost laughed. Marine training? Sweetheart, he said. We practice running into bad decisions on purpose. A soft sound escaped her. A laugh, or something close to it. Are strange, human. Thanks, he said. You're not so terrible yourself. He ducked behind a collapsed metal beam and checked his tactical display. The static had cleared enough to show faint red blips. 3 of them, moving fast. 3 bogeys, he whispered. 2 o'clock. Kira shifted weakly in his arms. Turning her head toward the direction of the approaching signals, her hand tightened on his shoulder, not in fear but in warning. Dronid patrols hunt in triangular formations, she said. The visible 3 are bait. There will be flankers. Of course there are flankers, Brian muttered. Why make my life easy? He eased forward, stepping around shattered glass and burnt armor plates. He kept Kira close to his chest, careful not to jostle her injured spine. Even so, he felt her wince once, a sharp intake of breath against his neck. Sorry, he whispered. It's fine, she said, though her voice trembled. I've had worse. Her confidence surprised him again, even broken and bleeding. She carried herself like someone who refused to surrender. He moved between 2 fallen mechs. Her metal shells twisted and melted from heavy plasma fire. The air hummed with lingering energy, kept low, scanning corners, checking angles. Every shadow could be a threat. Every sound could mean death. Kira's eyes narrowed. Your armor, she said quietly. It is bulky, but impressive. Brian raised his eyebrows, admiring my gear. I didn't expect that from a Lazarian. It is only professional curiosity, she said, though there was a faint smile in her voice. Your equipment is rugged, simple, human, he smirked. And your armor is, tactical, very tactical, real striking design. Is that so? She asked, her tone faintly amused. Interesting what details you humans notice during battle. Before Brian could respond, the air vibrated with a sharp rising whine. Energy weapons charging, down. He snapped. He dove behind a broken pillar, twisting his body so Kira was shielded against his chest. Plasma bolts ripped through the space. They had occupied a moment earlier, melting chunks of stone and metal, sending sparks flying. Well, Kira said dryly, her face inches from his. This is cozy. Brian pressed his back against the pillar and peeked around the edge. 5 Dronid warriors were advancing in a half circle. Their armor glowed with pulsing red veins, their weapons hot with energy. Comfortable? He asked. Quite she replied, though I prefer my intimate encounters with less plasma fire involved, noted, Brian said. I'll plan something quieter next time. He slid his rifle up and aimed. He said there's a weak spot? At the junction, between the shoulder and neck, she whispered. 1 precise shot will overload their armor systems. Brian steadied his breath, lined up the shot, and fired. The plasma bolt struck exactly where she'd described. The Dronid warrior's armor flared, then exploded violently. The blast took out 2 others beside it. Kira blinked in surprise. Impressive shooting. Impressive intel, he countered. We make a good team. Another roar rolled across the battlefield as more enemies approached. Brian adjusted his hold on Kira, lifting her more securely. Her arm draped over his shoulder, fingers gripping his armor as though preparing for another wave of danger. You ready? He asked. I cannot walk, she said, but I can think, and I can see. That's enough, he said. Let's move. He stepped out. From behind the pillar and sprinted across the rubble, dodging fallen beams and shattered walls. Distant gunfire echoed across the wasteland. Smoke curled around them like gray ghosts, and above the sky was dark with ash. Kira's breathing steadied again. Her voice dropped to a whisper. To the west, smell that fuel? Lots of it? Brian sniffed the air. Burnt gas, overheated metal, and something else. You're right there, she pointed weakly. A downed transport. If it's one of ours, Brian said, it might have a medical pod. She nodded. Worth the risk. Brian tightened his grip and began moving toward it. Then let's check it out. As they approached the ruined transport, his HUD flickered with new alerts. More hostiles. Closer this time. Kira sensed it too.
Company.
Oh yeah, Brian said. Looks like we're about to have ourselves a party. She managed a faint smile. Good thing you brought a date. And with that, Brian pushed forward. Into the wreckage, carrying the warrior no one else would save, his heart steady, his mind clear, and the danger closing in from every side. The downed transport lay half buried in the dirt, its hull torn open like a metal carcass. Blue emergency lights flickered inside, casting long shadows across the broken floor. Brian climbed over a twisted support beam, still holding Kira close. Her breath warmed his neck as she watched every corner with sharp, trained eyes. Power source is still active, she murmured. I can feel the energy field. You guys can feel electricity now, Brian said. We can feel many things, she replied, her voice low, especially when our lives depend on it. Inside, the air hummed softly. The place looked half-destroyed, burnt walls, shattered panels, scattered tools, but one thing stood untouched at the center of the room. A tall, like pod glowing with soft blue light. Brian stopped. Well, that's not Alliance standard. Kira inhaled sharply. By the first light, that is a Lazarian healing chamber. It looks fancy, Brian said. It is sacred, she whispered. This technology, it is older than most of our cities. Only our high healers are allowed to use it. Brian stepped closer, shifting her gently in his arms. Will it fix your spine? Yes, she said. But there is more you must know. She met his eyes, her storm gray gaze steady despite the pain. Our healing chambers do not work like yours. They heal by forming a temporary biological link between the patient and the operator. Okay, Brian said slowly. And what exactly does that mean? It means, she said softly, sharing the chamber with me would be more binding than marriage among my people. Brian blinked. More binding than marriage? Yes, she whispered. When two people enter the chamber together, their bodies adapt to each other. Their minds may connect. The bond is permanent. Brian stared at the glowing pod, then back at her. So using this thing means we get space married? A faint purple blush rose across her cheeks. In simple human terms, yes. Outside, distant explosions rumbled. His HUD flashed red, more enemies closing in. They had minutes at best. Kira touched his chest weakly. Brian, listen. If you leave now, you can escape. If you enter the chamber with me, your life will change forever. You may not even stay fully human. You must think I've thought, he said, cutting her off. And I'm not leaving you. She stared at him, stunned. Most would hesitate. I'm not most. He adjusted his grip and stepped toward the pod. I didn't carry you all this way to drop you at the finish line. Her eyes softened. You continue to surprise me, human? He grinned. Stick around. I'm full of surprises. The chamber's crystal surface slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a space just large enough for two bodies. Kira's hand trembled as she touched his shoulder. Brian, once this begins, there's no turning back. Our lives, our futures, will fuse. Good, he said. I like the sound of our future. Her breath caught. Hey, last chance to back out. Not a chance, beautiful. Lowering her gently into position as she guided his hands. Their bodies aligned naturally, her face only inches from his. The chamber lights brightened around them until everything glowed. I do have one question. Brian whispered as the pod sealed shut. Does this officially make me your space husband? She opened her mouth to answer, but the chamber activated first. A brilliant wave of light engulfed them. Brian gasped as warmth flooded through him like liquid fire, soft and strangely comforting. He felt Kira's presence in his mind, her memories brushing against his, her emotions mixing with his heartbeat. Her strength, her pride, her pain. Something deeper, something tender washed over him. At the same time, she felt his courage. His stubborn loyalty, his fierce protectiveness, and the truth that he would never have left her behind. Their thoughts moved together, blending, shaping, shifting. It was like dancing without bodies, speaking without words, seeing without eyes. Their DNA shimmered in the light, twisting and adapting in ways neither species had ever intended. Her surprise at his acceptance hit him like a warm pulse. His attraction to her warrior spirit glowed through her nerves. For a moment they were not two people, they were one. And then the light faded. Brian blinked. The world returned slowly. Kira stood before him, legs steady beneath her, eyes sharp and bright. Storm gray irises now held faint flecks of his warm brown. Her skin shimmered with a new glow. "I can feel my legs," she whispered, amazement in her voice. Then she stepped closer, breath trembling. "And I can feel you. All of you. Your thoughts. Your emotions." Brian reached out and cupped her cheek. "Yeah," he said softly. "That's new." Their movements aligned naturally, perfectly, as if they had practiced for years. When she leaned closer, he felt her intention before she even moved. When he exhaled, she felt the breath in her own chest. It was real, it's permanent, and it was powerful. A deep explosion shook the transport, snapping both of them back into focus. Enemy signatures swarmed across his visor. Kira reached for her weapons. Brian reached for his rifle. "Ready to run?" he asked. She smiled, a fierce, beautiful warrior's smile now tinged with a warmth only he could feel through their new bond. "Ready to fight," she said, together. And in that moment, without a single doubt, both of them knew nothing would ever be the same again. The transport shook again, harder this time. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. Sparks burst from a broken panel above their heads. Brian lifted his rifle, and Kira stepped beside him, her energy blades activating with a sharp hum that seemed to vibrate through both of their chests. Their bond made the sound feel alive, like a heartbeat they suddenly shared. "They're breaching the medical bay doors," Brian said, checking his HUD. Kira tilted her head. "I can sense them too. Their footwork, their weapons, their anger." She looked at him, a strange calm on her face. "Your thoughts help me focus, and yours help me shoot straight," Brian replied. The doors exploded inward. Droned warriors poured in, armor glowing red, claws raised. They expected two exhausted survivors. Instead, they found something entirely different. Brian fired the first shot before the enemy even adjusted their aim. He didn't think Kira's instincts flowed into him, guiding his angles, his timing. The blast hit the first warrior directly in the weak spot she had described earlier. Its armor ruptured, and the explosion knocked down two more behind it. Kira leapt forward, her restored legs moving with stunning grace. Brian felt her excitement pulse through the bond. Every motion she made echoed inside his chest, like he was moving with her. Her blades swept through the air, leaving trails of bright blue light that matched the rhythm of his own shots. Left flank. She didn't say thought, and Brian was already turning, firing 3 rounds exactly where she needed them. The bullets hit before the drones even raised their weapons. "Behind you?" Brian thought back, and Kira spun, blade slicing. Through a warrior's chest with perfect timing, they laughed at the same moment. A single shared breath of exhilaration. The Dronids hesitated. They had fought humans before. They'd fought Lazarians before. They'd never fought a pair. Fused together, perfectly synchronized, reading each other's bodies and minds before either moved, ready to push. Brian asked. "Always," she answered. They charged as one. The fight became a dance, fast, deadly, beautiful. Brian's rifle sang with bright plasma fire while Kira's blades hummed a sharp counterpoint. They moved around each other effortlessly, never colliding, always filling the other's blind spots. Every motion felt natural, like breathing. A Dronid jumped at Kira's back. Brian didn't even turn his head. He felt her fear spike through the bond, aimed instantly and fired over. His shoulder, the creature fell before it reached her. Kira's gratitude washed into him, warm and electric. "You saved me," she whispered through their connection. "Anytime, sweetheart," he thought back. When the last enemy fell, the room went quiet, except for the crackle of fires and their synchronized breathing. "Right." Brian lowered his rifle slowly. Kira stood beside him, blades still glowing, her chest rising and falling in the same rhythm as his. That, he said, was intense. That, she said, voice soft and trembling, was exhilarating. The bond pulsed again, stronger. Now that the danger had passed, their adrenaline mixed together, his rushing into her, hers into him, creating a loop of heat and energy that neither could resist. Kira stepped closer, her silver hair brushing his cheek. He felt her desire before she moved, felt it like a spark against his skin. "We should," he began. "Yes," she whispered. Her lips met his. The world flipped. Every touch echoed twice, once in hers. Every breath they shared doubled back into them through the bond, building waves of sensation that made time blur. Her fingers traced his armor, and he felt it on his own skin. His hands held her waist, and she felt the grip inside her pulse. Bond didn't just connect their minds. It amplified everything: emotion, heat, instinct, creating a feedback loop that grew deeper with every heartbeat. They fell together into that shared fire, letting it consume the fear, the exhaustion, the pain. For once there was only connection, only closeness, only them. Hours passed like minutes. They lay together afterward, bodies tangled, armor scattered. Across the corner of the room, Kira's head rested against Brian's chest, her lavender skin glowing faintly in the soft light. Brian traced gentle circles on her arm. Every small touch sent warm ripples through both of them. "That was," Brian began, searching for a word. "Unprecedented," Kira said with a tired smile. "Even for my people." He chuckled softly. "Must be my irresistible human charm." "No," she said gently. "It is your determination. When the bond formed, you did not fight it. You accepted it fully. You accepted me fully." Her voice softened. "Most would not." Brian tightened his arm around her. "Why would I hesitate? You're the most amazing woman I've ever met." She went quiet, but through the bond he felt her happiness, warm and bright. And something else, something uncertain, something she hesitated to reveal. "There's something you should know about Lazarian biology," she said slowly. "More surprises?" he asked. "You could say that? What kind of surprises?" But before she could answer, a distant explosion rocked the transport, shaking dust from the ceiling. Their bond flared with warning. Enemy signals lit up Brian's HUD again. Kira grabbed her blades. Brian reached for his rifle. "Tell me later," he said. "Yes," she replied, moving with renewed strength. "Later." But as she stood, he felt her rest a hand softly, almost unconsciously, in her abdomen. Through the bond, he sensed a tiny flicker of something new, something alive, something neither of them had been expecting, and the consequences were only just beginning. The explosion shook the transport hard enough to rattle loose panels from the ceiling. Brian steadied himself with one hand and lifted his rifle with the other. His HUD flashed with growing clusters of red dots. More hostiles. More danger. Time to rest. Kira stood beside him, blades glowing with fresh energy. Her movements were fluid again, almost effortless. But Brian's eyes weren't on her weapons. They were on the way her hand had drifted to her stomach after they stood, almost like she didn't realize she had done it. "Kira," he said, keeping his voice low, "what were you going to tell me before that blast?" She hesitated long enough that he felt the hesitation move through their bond like a soft tremor. "Brian, when two Lazarians form a bond through a healing chamber, our bodies synchronize. They adapt. They shift." Her voice softened. "And when the connection is strong, when the partners are compatible, something else can happen." Another explosion thundered outside, but neither of them moved. "What?" Brian asked. She looked at him, eyes bright and serious. "Pregnancy can occur quickly. Naturally, the bond accelerates everything." Brian blinked. "So you're saying I might be a father?" Kira pressed a hand to her abdomen again, this time intentionally. "Yes," she whispered. "You are." Brian stared. Then he let out a breath that half laughed, half gasped. "Well, that's pretty on brand for today. Even through the danger, even with enemies closing in, He felt her amusement ripple into him through the bond. "You're not surprised?" she asked Kira. Brian said, "After everything that's happened. Bonding. Getting through an army space marriage by accident, finding out we made a half-human, half-Lazarian baby. Honestly feels like the logical next step." Before she could respond, the bond pulsed suddenly strong and bright. Brian froze. He felt something. A spark. A tiny little pulse of awareness inside Kira's body. It brushed against his mind like a soft touch. Curious. Warm. Very small. But very real. "Kira," he whispered. Eyes wide. "I can feel them." She stepped closer, her expression softening in wonder. Lazarian mothers sense their children before birth. But the bond we share, it lets you feel them too. He reached out with his mind gently, and the spark responded. A faint light, a flicker of life. And then an emotion, simple but strong trust. That's Brian swallowed. That's our future. "Yes," Kira whispered. "Our child will be the first of their kind." Before they could say more, the bond jolted again, this time with sharp warning. Enemy forces close. Very close. Brian raised his rifle. Kira lifted her blades. "We need to move," he said. "Yes," she agreed. "We fight for 3 now." They burst out of the transport together. Drawned warriors were already closing in across the rubble. Brian dropped 2 with precise plasma shots. Kira moved in front of him, blades flashing bright as she cut through the next wave. Brian felt something new, an extra layer in the bond. Not just him and Kira, a third presence. Their child. The tiny spark inside Kira seemed to reach out, touching both their senses, widening their awareness. Suddenly, Brian saw enemy positions he hadn't scanned. Kira moved with new balance, new clarity, guarding her midsection without even thinking. Their reflexes sharpened, their instincts aligned more tightly than ever. "Did you feel that?" Brian asked, firing at an angle he didn't know he could hit. "Yes," Kira said, slicing. "Through a lunging warrior. Our child is helping us. That's insane." "That is Lazarian biology," she responded, breath quick but steady, or rather our new version of it. They pushed forward in perfect harmony, clearing a path through the rubble. Every time an enemy approached from behind, Brian felt the warning through the bond before Kira even turned her head. Every time Kira swung her blade, Brian instinctively shifted to balance her movement. The tiny spark inside her flickered again, this time with urgency. Brian spun and fired behind them without looking. A Dronid fell at their backs. "The baby," he said, stunned, "is tactical?" "Apparently so," Kira said, eyes shining with both pride and disbelief. "Takes after its parents." Another explosion shook the ground. The sky burned orange from distant fires. Brian checked his HUD, what remained of it. "We're close," he said. "Alliance bunker. 3 kilometers." Kira touched her stomach. "Protective and fierce. Then we move quickly. Our child may be strong, but I want them safe." A wave of determination surged through the bond, his, hers, something tiny but powerful between them. "All right," Brian said, lifting her more securely as they moved. "Let's get there before Junior decides to add more surprises to our day." Kira laughed softly even as she cut down another enemy. "You humans have strange humor. Get used to it," he said. They pushed onward to warriors and a spark of life inside them, fighting as one, running toward shelter, and feeling the beginning of something far bigger than either of them could fully understand. The bunker finally came into view through the smoke, a massive steel structure half buried in shattered earth. Its walls were scarred by explosions. Fires burned across its perimeter. Something was wrong. Brian could feel it even before his HUD confirmed it. "Kira," he said quietly, "the security protocols, they're offline. It shouldn't be possible," she replied, slowing beside him. Her blades hummed softly. "Ready?" "Bunker defenses never go dark, not during wartime." Brian scanned again. No active turrets. No friendly signals. Only faint traces of movement inside. Wrong movement. hostile, organized, waiting. They've turned it into an ambush, Brian said. Kira inhaled sharply, one hand going to her stomach again. Through the bond, he felt a sudden spike of protective instinct so fierce it made his own chest tighten. And they expect us to walk right in, she said with a cold, steady calm. They think we're trapped. Brian cracked his knuckles against his rifle grip. Then let's show them how wrong they are. Before they moved, the bond pulsed again, another warm flicker from the tiny spark inside her. Not fear, not warning, guidance, Brian blinked. The babies, showing us something. Kira nodded, eyes widening slightly as new clarity flowed. Into her senses. Alternate paths. Maintenance tunnels. Blind spots the attackers don't know we can see. Brian laughed once, breathless. Our baby's smarter than half the officers in my division. And not even born yet, Kira added, pride coloring her thoughts. They moved forward, not through the main entrance, but along the path their unborn child highlighted in their shared awareness. They slipped past a collapsed wall, then down, into a half-buried access corridor. The shadows swallowed them. Drawned troops patrolled nearby, but none noticed the two figures sliding through the ruins like ghosts. Inside the bunker's outer hall, Kira stopped suddenly. Brian felt her tension and her fear through the bond. What is it? He whispered. She whispered back. They're using our own defense systems against us. And she was right. The bunker's turrets Alliance built, programmed for human signatures, had been hacked, rewired by drawned claws. Their targeting beams swept the hall in lethal arcs. Brian cursed under his breath. If we step out there, we'll be fried. Kira's hand tightened on his arm, but before either could act, their bond flared bright, so bright Brian almost staggered. The spark inside Kira shone like a tiny star. The turrets shifted slowly, smoothly, deliberately. I'm not doing that, Kira whispered, stunned. Me neither, Brian said. One by one, the weapons powered down. The lights dimmed. Soft hum rolled through the bunker like a system rebooting, but different, organic, harmonized. Their unborn child was reaching into the technology around them, understanding it, reshaping it, connecting with it in ways neither human nor Lazarian systems were ever built to allow. It's merging both technologies, Kira said in awe. Human circuits, Lazarian energies, all into one system. Brian touched her shoulder gently.
Out.
A lockdown Alliance bunker, and adapted it. Kira swallowed. While still a fetus, the moment of wonder didn't last. The next door opened with a hiss, revealing a squad of armed Dronids waiting in a wide formation. It was a trap, Brian muttered. Just like we thought. The Dronids roared and charged. Brian raised his rifle. Kira raised her blades. But the bond was different now, stronger, deeper, guided by the child. Brian saw the enemy's movements before they happened. Kira sensed angles Brian didn't even know existed. Their unborn child fed them information distances, vulnerabilities, energy patterns instantly and clearly. They didn't fight like two warriors anymore. They fought like a single, unstoppable. Brian fired at the exact right second, dropping the leader. Kira leaped forward, spinning into a strike no Lazarian had ever used before, one, influenced by human footwork Brian unknowingly shared through the bond. With every kill, their synergy sharpened. With every danger, their child strengthened their connection. The Dronids hesitated. Brian felt it. Kira felt it, and the spark inside Kira pulsed once more, a signal to end it. The bunker's hybrid systems, now fully merged under the child's influence, erupted to life. Turrets turned. Energy shields activated. The lighting shifted into a combat-ready glow that matched Lazarian battle rhythms. The attackers never stood a chance. Within seconds, the corridor fell silent. Smoke curled around the bodies of the fallen. Kira breathed heavily, blades still humming. Brian lowered his rifle, sweat dripping down his forehead. That, he said, was our baby. Kira nodded slowly. Brian, they're not just powerful. They're something new. The bond pulsed again, gentle and warm, as if agreeing. Brian touched Kira's stomach softly. We get them to safety, no matter what it takes. Kira covered his hand with hers. Together, they moved deeper into the bunker knot, knowing that this was the moment everything changed. Not just for them, but for two entire species. For the war, for history, and the world was about to find out exactly what Brian, Kira, and their unborn child had become. The bunker settled into an uneasy quiet. Emergency lights flickered along the ceiling, casting long shadows across the reinforced walls. Brian and Kira stood in the command room, catching their breath as their bond slowly calmed after the battle. The air hummed with a strange new energy, neither fully human nor fully Lazarian. Their unborn child's presence filled the room like soft, warm light. Then Brian's HUD pinged. Incoming vessels, multiple human signatures, Lazarian signatures. High-ranking ships. Kira's eyes met his. Both our governments are coming. Brian exhaled. They must have seen the combat data the kid transmitted. Kira rested a hand on her stomach, her expression serious. They aren't coming to congratulate us. They're coming for answers. And we'll give them answers, Brian said, stepping behind her and placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. On our terms. 2 hours later, the bunker's upper doors groaned open. Soldiers and technicians from both species poured in, wide-eyed, tense, whispering in disbelief at the hybrid systems humming around them. The last to enter were the leaders themselves. Admiral Thompson, of the Alliance Navy, strode forward in his crisp uniform, trying to appear calm, but clearly shaken. Beside him walked Matriarch Arala of the Lazarian High Command, her regal battle armor glowing faintly with ceremonial runes. They stopped when they saw Brian and Kira, more specifically Kira's stomach, glowing softly with the child's presence. Sergeant Carter, Admiral Thompson said, voice tight, "Your combat logs show levels of system integration that should be impossible. We need an explanation." And the source of this power, Matriarch Arala added sharply, is clearly within your bond. Before Brian or Kira could answer, the perimeter alarms screamed to life. A final, drawn strike force, desperate, massive, closing fast. Admiral Thompson spun to his officers. Prepare defenses. But the child was already moving. The bunker hummed. Lights shifted. Screens across the room flickered to life, displaying the entire battlefield from angles no sensor could access. Human targeting systems fused with Lazarian. Spiritual mapping, creating one seamless interface. Matriarch Arala stepped back in shock. This is impossible. No, Kira said gently. It is evolution. The bunker's hybrid weapons, rewritten by their unborn child, activated. With perfect synchronization, plasma turrets fired streams of energy wrapped in Lazarian resonance. Defensive shields pulsed with rhythmic patterns that anticipated enemy movements. Every strike landed exactly where it needed to. The dronids faltered, then hesitated, then retreated, pulled. Back across the entire sector, as if something deep inside them suddenly understood the truth. They were facing a new kind of unity, new kind of power. A family fighting as one mind. The bunker quieted again. The leaders stared not at the battlefield, not at the screens, but at Brian and Kira, and the child inside her. Admiral Thompson finally spoke, voice shaking. Your child is interfacing with both our technologies? Yes, Brian said proudly. They understand both species in ways we never could. They are not a hybrid, Matriarch, Arella said, awe softening her voice. They are a bridge, a living connection between our peoples. The bond pulsed again this time, broadcasting a gentle wave of warmth that washed over everyone in the room. Even the skeptical officers felt it. Even the hardened veterans paused. The child was reaching out, showing them unity, showing them what was possible. Do you understand now? Kira said softly. What we created wasn't a mistake or a violation, it was destiny. The matriarch slowly bowed her head. A new chapter of our species. Admiral Thompson nodded. Reason to end this war. For a moment, peace itself seemed to hover in the air, fragile but real. But time passed. Months moved on. and the greatest moment was still ahead. 3 months later, a new beginning. Brian paced outside the chamber in the Human Lazarian Unity Medical Center, facility built using the very technology their child had inspired. Every screen, every glowing panel, every healing device pulsed with a harmony that didn't exist before. Kira's voice brushed his mind with warm amusement. "Brian, stop pacing. You're making the doctors nervous." He smiled and walked inside. Kira lay in a healing cradle, silver hair spread like a halo, her lavender skin glowing, even brighter than before. Their bond wrapped around them like soft light, pulsing with the presence of the tiny life ready to enter the world. "You look beautiful," Brian whispered. "You're biased," she teased, "but I'll allow it." The child stirred the machines, responded, instantly shifting into a delivery mode that combined human medical science and Lazarian energy guidance. Nurses and healers worked side by side, following protocols the unborn child had helped design. Hours passed, pain, joy, shared breath, shared heartbeats, shared minds, and then, with a cry that resonated through their bond like a rising star, he was born. Brian felt tears rise as he held their son for the first time. The child's skin shimmered with a soft lavender glow. His hair was a blend of Brian's brown and Kira's silver. His eyes opened slowly, revealing a mix of storm gray and earth brown swirling together like galaxies. "Eris," Kira whispered. Their chosen name, Brian swallowed hard. "Hey, little guy." A gentle pulse spread through the room as Eris's tiny consciousness reached out, curious, warm, welcoming. The lights dimmed and brightened softly, responding to him. Machines adjusted themselves around his needs. The room felt alive. "He's already interfacing with the center," Brian said with awe, but gently, not like during the war. "Because he doesn't need to fight anymore," Kira replied, kissing the baby's forehead. "We changed that." Brian sat beside her on the bed, wrapping an arm around his new family. Eris snuggled between them, glowing faintly with soft energy. "You know," Brian said quietly, "when I found you on that battlefield, I never imagined it would lead here." Kira smiled. Their bond hummed with love. The great human warrior didn't expect to save a paralyzed alien princess, fall in love with her, and father the galaxy's first natural hybrid. Brian laughed. "Not exactly." Ares Kudand. The lights brightened in response. Kira leaned her head against Brian's shoulder. "A new era begins today," she said softly, and through their bond, Brian, Kira, and little Eris felt the truth. The future would never be the same, and they would face it together.